Hey guys, Will here. So today we're taking a look at this really interesting new product from Next Level Racing. This is the HF8 Haptic Feedback Gaming Pad. Now it's a pad or an insert that you put into your sim racing chair, your flight sim chair, or even just your standard gaming chair. You can even chuck it on your couch for watching movies and listening to music if you want to. But what this does is it basically provides localized feedback or haptic feedback through an array of vibration motors which are positioned throughout the pad. So those of you who've been watching this channel for a while would know that the Buttkicker Gamer 2, which we reviewed many years ago now, is one of my all-time favorite bang for buck sim racing products. It's a fantastic way of adding extra immersion to your sim rig at a relatively low price. So this guy comes in at a similar price and it has a couple of advantages and disadvantages, at least on paper, compared to something like a Buttkicker. So let's check this guy out today and see exactly what it brings to the gaming experience. So firstly, a big thank you to Next Level Racing for sending this across to us today to check out. Now, if you do decide you want to pick one of these up or any of the other gear that we compare it to in today's video, there will be some links down in the description below, which are an awesome way of helping support the channel at no additional cost to you. So we really do appreciate your support there. That's what keeps us running. There is also a 5% discount code for Next Level Racing gear down there too. So make sure you check that out if you are looking at picking one of these things up. One thing I will mention as well is that one of the great things about Next Level Racing, they do actually sell through a lot of retail stores as well, which means you can actually walk into a store and pick one of these up depending on where you are in the world as well. So definitely check that out as well. You might be able to find a better deal in one of those stores than you can find online as well. So definitely do your research before you pick one of these up, but hopefully that discount code will help you guys out. And as is always the case here at Boosted Media, no company has any sort of editorial control over anything we say here. Everything we share today is purely our own observations and our own opinions, and nobody gets to see the video before you guys do. Okay, so why am I excited about the HF8? Now I mentioned earlier that it comes in around about the same kind of price as a Buttkicker Gamer 2. So you're looking at $229 US or around 399 Australian dollars. Obviously check your local pricing, import duties, taxes, all those kinds of things, and check those retail stores as well just to see if there is a better deal local to you. But back when I tested the Buttkicker Gamer 2 many years ago now, I was absolutely blown away with the amount of extra immersion that it brings to the sim racing experience for a relatively cheap price. Now, one of the disadvantages of something like a Buttkicker system is that it's not as localized as something like this. So the vibration is coming through a single transducer, which is bolted somewhere on your rig. And because it's bolted to the rig, there's going to be some dampening that happens throughout the rig itself. So you can imagine if it's bolted to the frame underneath the seat, the frame is going to be absorbing a lot of that vibration. It's going to get transferred through to the floor. And there's a lot of ways for it to kind of, I guess, disperse throughout the rig before it actually reaches your body. And it's not providing that localized feedback in a particular area of your body either. So I'm really excited to see exactly what this kind of localized feedback is able to achieve. Now, the flip side to that is that this is using vibration motors similar to what you'd have in a game controller or even something like a smartphone or a handheld gaming device, as opposed to tactile transducers. Now, the advantage of a tactile transducer is that it's able to respond very quickly and through a very large frequency range. So a tactile transducer is kind of like a subwoofer or a speaker. It's actually using an acoustic signal to vibrate a shaker inside the unit itself. And if you want to understand more about exactly how that works, you can check out our Buttkicker Gamer 2 review, which I'll link down in the description below. So this is a little bit different. It's using vibration motors, which are obviously going to have a little bit more delay in their time to spin up and spin down. They're also, on paper at least, not going to provide the same kind of amplitude and strength as something like a Buttkicker. But because you have this so localized, it's right on you rather than being bolted somewhere on the rig, it's going to be really interesting to see how the two compare. So what we're going to be doing today is testing this guy out on my daily driver sim rig. Now, those of you who watch the channel regularly will know we have a D-Box G3 motion system installed on that rig. That is a $14,000 motion system. So way more expensive than something like this is. And that has obviously the advantage of full motion. So it moves the entire rig around and lets you feel the sensation of the vehicle moving around relative to the road surface. But what it also is able to do is transmit vibrations, engine vibration, the sensation of running over curbs, bumps, and things like that as well. So I'm really fascinated to see from a pure immersion perspective just how close something like this is able to get to the D-Box at an absolute fraction of the price. And obviously, just aside from the sheer difference in cost, something like this also has the advantage of being portable. You can just move move it onto a different gaming chair or a different rig if you want to. Now, a couple of really important points when it comes to compatibility. You'll see on the box, it does say that it's PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo Switch compatible. Now, the experience that you're gonna get will vary depending on the type of device that you're using. So if you're on a PC, one of the things that is really cool about this is that it's actually using the telemetry data coming out of your sim to generate the effects rather than just using the audio signal. Now, I actually had a rumble system similar to this about 25 years ago now. It was called the Aura Shaker 2, and that just used an audio signal coming out of the PC to generate effects. So essentially that was basically just kind of like a subwoofer that you had strapped to your body, which would generate those kinds of effects. And it was great for things like gunshots, but it wasn't gonna give you that localized feedback that something like this is gonna give. So what happens here if you're on a PC and you're using a compatible sim title, and there is a full compatibility list on their website, which you should check out, link down in the description below. What it's gonna do is it's actually gonna operate each motor independently depending on the actual telemetry data that's coming out of the sim. So it should give a much more precise sense of feedback. So if you're running something like a first-person shooter on the PC, then it will just be using the audio signal similar to what we described earlier. If you're using an Xbox, PlayStation, or Switch, it's gonna be the same as well. So the experience is definitely gonna be better on a PC using a compatible title than it will be elsewhere, but we'll compare all that today as well for you guys and let you know exactly what the differences are, whether it's worth investing in something like this if you aren't gonna be able to use the full functionality through the PC. So let's quickly run through now exactly what you get inside the box. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You get obviously the pad itself, and we'll talk about the build quality and materials of that in just a second. Now there's a cable coming out of that which is fixed, so you can see it kind of just runs out of a little channel here. You've got a little pigtail here which connects to your DC power adapter. That is this guy here. You can see it comes with an assortment of different plugs depending on what region you are in the world. I believe they just ship them with all the different plugs as they've done here, and all you need to do is just push the little button on the side, twist, pop off the one that doesn't suit your region, and there we go. Good as gold. Australian plug on there now. So just in case you're wondering, this little power adapter is able to plug into anywhere between 100 and 240 volts AC. So you're not going to need an inverter or anything like that if you are in a different region. And it outputs 12 volts DC at 1 amp or 12 watts. So 12 watts total power consumption by this thing, which is a hell of a lot less than my D-Box G3 on the daily driver rig. And that's one thing that I know a lot of people are conscious of these days as well, with power consumption, power prices going through the absolute roof. So you've got the power supply. We've already talked about that. You've got the other cable coming out, and again, this is fixed in position, so you can't sort of unclip this or undo it and take it off. And that runs into this little control module here, which is just a dial and a button. We'll explain exactly how that works later on. There's a little LED there too. And then you've got another cable coming out of here into a splitter, and this splits off into 3 separate cables. So you've got your USB connection for connecting to a PC exclusively. Nice long cables on all of these too, which is a nice touch. And then you've also got a 3.5mm audio jack here. So for any scenario where you're not able to use the USB connection, so if you're wanting to watch a movie or play on a console, for example, then this is the guy that you would use. Now, one important thing to understand here is that it can be a little bit finicky if you're playing on a console, particularly PlayStation. So I've grabbed a PlayStation controller here. So the way you would use this, and you will need to have a controller even if you're driving with a steering wheel, so you'll need to have a controller paired to your system. What you do is you plug the audio jack into the audio socket on your controller. And what that will then do is tell the console to route the audio through the audio jack on the controller rather than through the HDMI or audio output on the back of the console. So then you also have a female 3.5mm audio jack here, which you can plug your headset or your sound system into. So in the case of using a headset, we just grab our headphones and literally plug that in. And then what that's doing is it's taking the audio from the controller, passing it through the system, and then spitting that back out through the female audio jack so you still get sound out of your headphones. So just one thing to note here, and I don't have specific experience with the Xbox, so definitely do your research there, but with the PS5 at least, and I believe the PS4 as well, when you plug a pair of headphones into the audio jack or any sort of audio device into the audio jack on the controller, it actually disables the audio output via HDMI through to your TVs. So if you're wanting to use your home theater system for audio through the HDMI connection, but you're also wanting to use the gaming pad, that will cause a problem. Now, there are ways around that. You can use something like a HDMI audio extractor to actually pull the audio and plug this into the extractor rather than into your controller. And that would allow you to essentially tap into that audio coming through the HDMI without stopping it from coming through your home audio system. So that is one important consideration. That is definitely something that I would need to do for my particular setup upstairs with my PS5, because I do rely on my home audio system for audio in that particular setup. So the only other thing in the box is just the instruction manual. Now, Next Level Racing are absolutely fantastic in our experience with their documentation. They do have a series of setup videos on their website showing you how to set up with a console, showing how to set it up with a PC, running you through the software and all those things. We'll take you through the software in detail today as well. But this thick instruction manual is multilingual, so there's only about 12 pages in each language. So don't be freaked out by the thickness of that. It is very simple to get up and running. And then we have the pad itself. So let's talk a little bit about the build quality here. The first thing that struck me here is that it actually does have pretty impressive build quality. Again, putting in the perspective of the price point for this product. So you can see it's got the nice rubber logo here, which kind of gives it that racing chair kind of feel. We'll obviously talk about ergonomics when we get it into the rig and a gaming chair a little bit later on, but you can see it's got this kind of faux leather material around the pads, but the areas in between are actually a porous kind of fabric material. So it's not the same pleather material the entire way through. And you can see it's got these ventilation holes or perforations in here as well. So it will be hopefully nice and breathable, won't get too sweaty around the back and legs. And then you can see it's got this fabric edging all the way around here to avoid any fraying or tearing of the material on the edges. So it appears to be relatively durable. Obviously, we'll have to see how it stands the test of time, but I certainly don't have any immediate concerns when it comes to the overall build quality. Now, if we flip it around here, you can see it is just sort of like a foam material at the back. So it's going to be interesting to see whether it does get stinky over time as well. I think that because this material around here is a little bit porous and because it does have these ventilation holes or perforations, it probably will take in a little bit of sweat and things like that. Now, just having a look around in general, one thing that I did spot is a little zip here, and that had me hopeful that you might be able to kind of pull the entire insert out and actually wash the skin of this thing. But it does appear that this is purely just for manufacturing. I can feel when I get my hand in there, and you can see the foam that they've used throughout. It's nice, squishy foam, but you can't really kind of pull anything out here. It does feel like it's kind of glued and fixed in position. I can sort of see in there where the vibration motors sit, but yeah, everything appears to be pretty well fixed in position. So I don't think this is something that you're going to be pulling apart to wash. So that is a little bit disappointing. I can see why they do that. Obviously, if you're able to pull everything out of it, then there's the opportunity to break cables and, you know, put things back in the wrong position and stuff. So, you know, it does make sense that it's made that way. But for me personally, I would have liked to have been able to pull things out and wash this when it gets stinky over time, which inevitably I'm sure it will. But in fairness, the raised areas that you're actually making contact with your body are that pleather material. So you can wipe them off relatively easily. Obviously, if you spill something, it might be a different story because it's going to get in through the perforations. But yeah, it's certainly not a really absorbent material or anything like that that's going to get really, really gross over time. But we'll let you guys know in the comments as well as in our article on the website whether we do have any more long-term issues. The other thing that jumps out to me is the thickness of the areas where the pads are actually sitting. So we can see 2 in the shoulders here, and if I pull that around, you can see it's probably, I want to say, about a little bit over 1 inch thick where each of those vibration motors sits. So it's going to be really interesting to get this in the rig and see exactly how comfortable it is. But when I compress the foam down, so I'm pushing right down against the solid table underneath, I'd say that's raising my seating position by about 1 inch. So if that's something that's going to be a problem for you, definitely consider that as well. But look, I think that's everything really that we need to go through on the table. So let's get it up on the daily driver rig now. We'll test it out in a gaming chair a little bit later on too. You can see all you need to do to actually mount it in your rig or your gaming chair is just use these straps provided to secure everything down. And it really is as simple as that. So let's get it set up on the rig now and do some driving. Okay, so we've got the HF8 installed in my Lusso Motors racing seat, which I've been running on my daily driver rig for a long time now. So yeah, you can see it pretty much fit like a glove. It was almost like it was designed to fit in here, but we will test this out with some other seats a little later on too. Didn't end up needing to use the bottom strap at all. It just kind of sits in there nicely. The back strap literally just wraps around and kind of secures it in place so it doesn't flap around or anything. But just a couple of things to note here quickly. If you are going to be hard mounting this to your rig somehow, if you want to use double-sided tape to stick it down on a side rail or something like that, just make a note of that serial number. You will need it to download the software a little bit later on. There is a software package you can download to get the serial number if you have blocked yourself from reading it, but it's just easier to write it down before you stick this to your rig. So you can see the cable there is a little short. If you wanted to have this further away from your seating position, it might be a problem for you. I would like to see a slightly longer cable on there, but otherwise everything is absolutely fine. And I got to say, it fits like a glove. So let's clamber on into the rig now. It's going to be really interesting to see how it raises my seating position, whether it gets really uncomfortable, because I do have a very specific setup in this rig. But okay, so yeah, I mean, it's definitely raised me up by about 1 inch, as I was explaining before. No surprises there, but it's actually surprisingly comfortable. I mean, obviously you do feel the variance in pressure underneath you from where those thicker parts are, where the actual vibration motors are. So it's not a, you know, it's not like sitting in a continuous cushion, but it's certainly not uncomfortable or hard. Now I'm about 90 kilograms, so a little bit heavier than a lot of people that will be using this probably are. And I think the lighter you are, probably the more comfortable it's going to be. So yeah, but certainly not uncomfortable by any means. So yeah, I've got to say that concern isn't really a concern, which is great. So just quickly on the software side as well, one thing that I do want to highlight here, because I think it's something that Next Level Racing do exceptionally well, is just the whole process of downloading, installing, and running the software. So as I mentioned earlier, you will need the serial number from the module. The reason for that is they actually detect the device that you have from the serial number and automatically point you to the correct driver. So you hit up nextlevelracing.com/support-downloads. That's going to take you to a page where you put in the serial number. I've already done that here. Hit enter and it takes you to this page here. So you can see I can download the latest build of the software, which is still in beta. You can download the previous build as well if you are having some sort of an issue with the latest build. And then it takes you through a couple of different tips here as well. So it tells you there's no need for any additional drivers, just the software, and also a couple of tips for PlayStation, Xbox users, system requirements, supported operating systems, all the things that you're going to need at this point in the process to move further forward. So they've really done a good job of sort of holding your hand through that entire process. And I thought that was worth highlighting. So let's take a super quick look at the software now. One complaint that I do have, this is a pet peeve of mine. It does prompt you to create an account and log in before you can actually get in and use the software. It may not bother you, but I just wanted to let you guys know about that. I haven't gotten any obnoxious emails or anything like that from it other than just the verification email. But yeah, just letting you guys know. But anyway, once you are into the software, once you're registered, this is what you will see. Nice, clean software as we've come to expect from Next Level Racing. Same kind of experience as what we've had with their Traction Plus system and their motion systems in the past. So you can see here a visual representation of all the various different vibration motors on the rig. You can see the intensity adjustment down here. You can slide that up and down, or you can adjust it with the little knob on the dial like so, and you can see that goes up and down. I'm going to wind that all the way up to 100%. Let's live dangerously. Okay, and then over on the right hand side here, you can see all the various different sim racing titles that it is currently compatible with. You can see X-Plane 11 is also there and Flight Simulator 2. Now they are expanding compatibility all the time, but as it stands right now, that is what you have. Now there are a bunch of filters here. You can have it only show games that are installed. You can filter it by genre as well. If you go into settings, this is what I was really hoping we would see. So I'm really happy to see that it is there. We have the option also to auto detect the current game. I have no idea why that is switched off by default, but that is something that you'll definitely want to switch on. I've also got it starting with Windows. I'm going to start it minimized as well. And that has actually minimized it for me. So I'm just going to go back in and launch it again. There we go. And you can also set it so that when you close the software, it will close it to the tray rather than closing it completely. I might actually switch that on too, I think. So we'll go back to the home screen there again. And look, I mean, it's all pretty straightforward. The other thing you can do is, by the looks of things, click on the individual little areas. So let's get a feel for it now. I might start with the butt cheeks, I think. Let's click on this guy. Okay, it's there. It's there. I can definitely feel it. And it does give you a good sensation of localized vibration too. Now, depending on your seating position, your legs may not actually be making contact with these two bottom ones. I've specifically adjusted my seat so that they are, so that is good. Okay, that one, those ones around the sort of small of your back there do actually feel pretty good. A little bit more sensation there than in the butt, but again, that's going to depend on your body shape and type. And then shoulder blades, yeah. So one thing that I have noticed is that the intensity slider here doesn't impact the sensation that you get when you click on each of these buttons. I was hoping to sort of test the full scale from minimum to maximum through just sort of sitting statically in the rig like this rather than driving, but unfortunately can't do that. So then we get into the actual adjustment of the system to fine tune to your personal preference. So basically what you have is a profile for each one of the games that you want to run. So we're going to click on Assetto Corsa Competizione here. You can see we've got jolts for gear shifts, which was actually one of my favorite effects on the Buttkicker Gamer 2. So it'll be really interesting to see how that feels. Braking, rev limiter, and these are just the default settings that they've got cooked in. Remembering, of course, we do have that master adjustment for the overall strength of the feedback, which we have got set to 100% at the moment. Acceleration, speed, sensation. I don't really know how speed could be communicated through it, but we'll try it. And then suspension movement as well. So you can see by default, all they've got on is the gear shift and rev limiter. I'm probably going to switch that effect off, but we will try it first just to sort of see what it feels like. That's generally just a shake in the car when you hit the rev limiter, so you know when to change gear. Engine RPM is one that I'll definitely test out too. We'll start off with the basic settings here, and then we can experiment a little bit more. Now, if we click on these little drop-down menus too, you can see we've got indicators here on the left-hand side that show us which area is labeled what, and you can switch each vibration motor on or off for each one of the effects that you want to feel too. And I also notice here we do have the ability to export and import profiles too. So if you want to save multiple different profiles for different sims or cars, you can do that too. So let's jump in now, do some driving with the baseline settings, and then we'll do some tweaking. So we're in Assetto Corsa Competizione here. I'm just going to drive out. And at the moment, all we have is just those gear changes and the rev limiter effects enabled. So I'm not going to be feeling any sort of vibration or anything like that in the road texture, but feel those gear changes. I just want to sort of start off with the basics here, get a sensation. Okay, that over rev does actually feel really good, I gotta say. Very similar to the Buttkicker, in fact. The gear clunks too. I mean, it's more, the gear clunk definitely feels less authentic than the Buttkicker did, because all it's doing is it's just, you know, it's a vibration motor that's spinning rather than, you know, a big transducer that's actually able to sort of thud, I suppose. So the high frequency stuff actually feels very similar though. And it's interesting because one thing I did notice straight away, and if I pop an earphone out, it's a lot quieter than a Buttkicker is. And I know that's one thing that a lot of people have an issue with. They really want to have that feedback in their rig, but you know, it's too noisy for the neighbors downstairs if they're in an apartment or something like that, or you know, just too noisy for people that might want to be sleeping next door. This is very, very, very quiet in operation. I mean, it's way quieter than the shifters are on the wheel, for example, so never going to be a problem. In fact, most of the sound that you hear from it is actually the vibration reverberating through your body rather than the actual sound of the unit externally, if that makes sense. So, but yeah, the over rev, it does feel quite authentic in that, you know, it's giving you a sensation of what's going on, letting you know that you need to do something, I suppose, giving you that tactile feedback. But let's quickly, we'll just pull up here, hit the pause button, and I'm going to enable some of those other effects. So to just run you through quickly what I've done here, I've moved the gear shift so it's only the upper back area, just so that we've got a bit of, I guess, distinction between what areas are doing what, so we can start to sort of, I guess, establish some sort of a muscle memory, I guess you could call it. Braking forces, I've got the front left and the front right. Then rev limiter, I've still got to just the high left and high right, just so I get that little bit of vibration there, but I don't want it to be overpowering. I just want it to give me the cue. Acceleration and speed, I've got turned off because I'm going to rely more on engine RPM. I want to get that sensation of the actual engine of the car reverberating through the car rather than I guess, an inauthentic thing like acceleration or speed. But we'll, of course, experiment with all this more before we film the conclusions a little bit later on in the video. And then we've also got the suspension effect here too. So I've got my engine RPM here set to just the lower left and lower right. So that's kind of the small on my back. And then I've got the suspension setting set to front left, front right, rear left, and rear right, corresponding to those areas on the rig too. So hopefully that seems kind of logical to me. So we'll see how it feels. We'll jump back in the sim now and continue. All right, so let's get a feel for this. So immediately that engine vibration does feel really, really nice. I'm going to pop my other earphone back in as well, so I'm not sort of trying to listen for the sound of it, but That is definitely adding. Okay, now this is starting to feel like what I wanted to feel. Initially, I was kind of like, yeah, this is cool, but it's not really doing much. But I mean, it was only really doing those two effects. But now that we've got the engine vibration coming through, along with those gear changes, I think I probably will move the gear changes back to my whole body because they do feel a little understated now. But that engine vibration in the small of the back feels really, really good. And then when I can feel when I go over the bumps now as well, I'm actually feeling it in my bottom, which is really cool. We'll get a few bumps going here as well, up over some curbs. And okay, yeah, so I'm feeling the rumble strips underneath my bottom as well. And it does, yeah, it does actually give a really good sensation of what the car's actually doing suspension-wise. You do actually feel that localized sensation that it's really hard to describe, but it's actually really good. As normally with my D-Box system, I'd be actually feeling those movements in terms of the rig actually moving around, but feeling it as a vibration underneath my bottom, actually, my brain is still able to kind of get a sense of what the car's doing through that vibration, even though it doesn't feel like the car actually physically moving around, if that makes sense. So there's definitely some information here that would genuinely, authentically lead you to having a better sense of what's going on with the car. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that something like this is going to make you faster, but it actually does work really well. And I think the thing that's probably surprising me the most about it is the fact that there is actually a good amount of variation in the sensation of the motors themselves as well. One thing that I was quite not worried about, but one thing that I thought might really stand out with the difference between a vibration motor and a vibration transducer is just kind of what I was describing before about not having that variance in frequency and the response time. But I've got to say, this genuinely feels a lot better than I thought it would. Let me just go out on the grass a little bit here as well. So yeah, I can feel there the sensation of, you know, the left-hand side of my body is feeling more vibration than the right. And yeah, I mean, obviously it's not going to come anywhere close to the level of immersion that you get from something like a D-Box. And you'll remember back when I did my initial impressions with the Buttkicker Gamer 2, I'd never ever had any sort of tactile feedback on a sim rig before, so it absolutely blew me away. And I don't want you guys to think that because my reaction to this isn't so extreme that it's not equally as good. I'd say it's different, but yeah, we'll discuss it more in the conclusions, but there's some clear things that I think this does better, and there's some clear things that I think it doesn't do as good a job as something like a Buttkicker for the same kind of price. But if I didn't have the D-Box system already, I'd say it's probably not really giving me anything in addition to what something like a D-Box gives me. And I wouldn't expect it to, again, for the price, of course. But if you're after something that gives you that tactile feedback without being noisy, without breaking the bank, and just, you know, you're just after something that gives you that little bit more immersion, then I've got to say this is actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be. It's as good as I'd hoped it would be, I guess is the best way to say it. Okay, so we've spent quite a bit of time now testing in a variety of different sim titles and tweaking and adjusting things to get everything dialed in exactly how I like it. Now, Honestly, it probably only took me about 20 minutes to reach the settings that ultimately I ended up using. I did a lot of adjusting beyond that just to kind of see if I was missing anything. But yeah, about 20 minutes for me was where I ended up, getting things dialed in. It might take a little bit longer for you if you're less experienced with vibration and tactile feedback type systems. But I'd say if you allow an hour, maybe two at most, to really get in there and fiddle with stuff, you should be able to find the settings that are going to maximize the experience for you. Remembering again that this is all very, very, very subjective. So what I like might not necessarily be what you like, but what I want to do now is just quickly run you through the settings that I landed with. Now you'll see here that I'm in iRacing now. What I found was that most of the settings were pretty consistent between all the different sim titles that we tested. So the settings that I have here for all the options that were available in ACC that we looked at earlier are the same. Now I tested ACC originally. You'll notice that iRacing and a couple of the other sims as well also have the ground effect setting, which wasn't present in ACC. So what I found was that in ACC, it felt to me at least like the ground effect type sensations were also coming through the suspension setting. So I don't feel like anything was missing in ACC, but I did feel like iRacing in particular did a better job of communicating what the car was doing overall. But anyway, the settings that I ended up with everywhere else were pretty much exactly the same. And again, it is very subjective, but I just want to quickly run you through what we ended up landing on here, just in case it is useful for you. So gear shift, I do like to have a nice, clearly defined clunk when I change gear. I just find that adds a lot of immersion. So I left this at 100% and I left it on for all the various different areas of the body. I found when it was only in my back, it just didn't quite have the strength that I wanted. And I would still like to have a little bit more amplitude, I think, on top of what's possible with this particular system. Then braking, I did end up switching on just for the front left and front right, so the frontmost pad areas. I just found that it was giving me a slight sensation of what was going on with the car, but not a whole lot. I didn't want to have it kind of going through my whole body. And what I found in general, as you go through the settings, you'll notice I was trying to kind of isolate different effects so we didn't have everything kind of fighting each other and all just sort of going over the top of each other. You really want to have things dialed into the point where it's adding to the experience, but not just adding noise in. And it is a fine line between just, chaotic noise and just having everything going on at once and actually feeling individual things that are going on with the car. So rev limiter, although I did really like the sensation of that, what I ended up doing was isolating that just to my shoulders because I wasn't running a lot of other effects in this area. So what that meant is that when I was getting into the red line zone, when I was wanting to change gear, I could sort of just pay attention to that slight sensation in my shoulders and that would give me that cue to change gear. Then I wound that down to 70% just so that it wasn't overpowering other effects that it might be going on at the time that I was changing gear. So that's where we were there. Acceleration and speed, actually ended up leaving these turned off. Did experiment with them, just found that they were adding noise and not really adding anything that was sort of communicating what the car was doing. Again, you might like them, but for me, I found that I was better off without them. So then engine RPM, again, I did really like this sensation, but I did end up winding it back a little bit and isolating it to just the small of my back area, just again, so I wasn't overpowering the other effects that were coming through the car. So then we get down into ground effects. And what I ended up doing here looks a little bit complicated. So in my butt and thigh area, I had it isolated to the area that it was actually, relative to in the car. So front left, front right, rear left and rear right, all sort of matching here. And I did actually find this was probably the effect that I enjoyed the most with this particular product compared to something like a single butt kicker. I did really genuinely feel that this was giving me a greater sensation of what was going on with the car, particularly in iRacing. That worked really well. And then for a little bit of additional immersion as well, I ended up adding the left-hand side and right-hand sides in the back area too, just to give that little bit more of an effect to what was going on. You may not like doing that. I would definitely suggest starting off with just these four here and then experimenting with these on or off if you like. It would be nice to be able to isolate the strength for individual areas of the thing rather than just having a overall strength for each individual effect and a master control. That's one thing I would like to see them add in the software a little bit later on because that'll give you a little bit more granularity in the adjustment. And then going down to suspension, as we saw before in ACC, I left that exactly the same. So I didn't find that adding those other areas, again, it was just sort of starting to add a little bit of noise. So I just left it isolated to the four corners of the car, as you see here. And that is my final settings as it stands in iRacing. Most of the other sims, as I said, were pretty similar. So let's jump in now and talk about our conclusions on the product overall. So conclusions on the Next Level Racing HF8. And look, overall, this product actually really impressed me. I think for the price point, it does a really, really good job of just giving you that extra bit of immersion. I think what surprised me the most was that, and again, comparing with the Buttkicker Gamer 2 as my point of reference here, it does give you more of a sensation of what's actually going on with the car than what you get with a single butt kicker type setup. And that actually surprised me. I wasn't sure what to expect there. Now, as we said at the start of the video, a vibration transducer like what you have in a butt kicker does have a much larger frequency range. It also has a faster response time too. And that's definitely one of the limitations of the HF8. I felt like overall it didn't have quite the amplitude or quite the strength that I would like. And it also, you know, you could tell that it had a very limited frequency range too. So it was kind of, even though you could feel the sensation of the vibration moving around different areas relative to what the car was doing, and that actually worked better than I expected it would, you don't really get a strong sensation of, you know, variance within that. So when you're going over a rumble strip or ripple strip, or when you're feeling undulations in the road, it's very much kind of like an on or off kind of effect rather than actually feeling, you know, the ramping up, the ramping down, the real kind of changes and subtle nuances in those individual effects. So I'd say probably where I'm at with this is, and I did quite a bit of thinking about this, is, you know, whether I would recommend a Buttkicker Gamer 2 or this. And I think for people that are not in an environment where noise is necessarily an issue for them, I think that the Buttkicker Gamer 2 probably does give you a slightly more greater sense of overall immersion than the HF8 does. But I think that the HF8 actually does a better job of communicating what the car's doing than a single butt kicker does. So I think if you're purely just after that immersion factor, then the butt kicker is probably the better choice. The HF8 is a better choice if you really want to sort of feel what's going on with the car that little bit more. But having said that, I think there are certain types of effects that are communicated more effectively with a butt kicker. And I think that a 4 transducer butt kicker system would overall be a much better system than what this is. But again, it's going to cost 4 times as much as what something like this costs. So I'd say, yeah, if you're in a situation where you really want a butt kicker, but you're worried about the noise, and they are quite noisy, maybe you're in an apartment building or you've got a bedroom or somebody trying to study next door to you or right next to you, you know, a butt kicker isn't really suitable for those kinds of scenarios, whereas this isn't going to be a problem in those scenarios. So this is definitely a good alternative to a butt kicker if that is what you're after. Where I think there's a bit of a gap in the market that this creates is I really wish that they made a pro version of this that actually had little vibration transducers like these Dayton Audio pucks. Now, I did a bit of research here. You can pick these up for about 40 Australian dollars each. Obviously, you times that by 8, you're looking at 320 bucks just for the transducers. Then you've got to have an amplifier that handles 8 channels on top of that. You've got to have all of the other bits and pieces, the padding and stuff. So if they were to make a version with these or something equivalent to this in it, it would obviously end up being more expensive than what this is. So I'm really glad that the HF8 exists. I think it does a really good job for what it is at the price point that it's at. And I don't think that if you were to buy one of these, you would be disappointed overall. But there is one really, really big catch here. And this is also the case with butt kicker systems too, but it's, I guess, exacerbated by the fact that we have multiple points of vibration here that it's able to give us sensation throughout different areas of the body, depending on what the car's doing or what's going on inside the sim. So the big catch here is that if you're not running a sim title that's compatible with the software, or if you're wanting to use it on a console, the experience is very greatly diminished there. So when you're relying on just the audio signal, you lose all of that sensation throughout different areas of the body, and it just kind of feels like a bit of noise overall. So it does still add a little bit to the immersion, but you're definitely not getting the same kind of value out of this product when you're running it in an audio environment compared to what you're getting on USB on a PC with a supported sim title. So I wouldn't say that it's a waste of money by any means. If you're comparing it to not having any kind of feedback at all, then it definitely does add that deeper level of immersion. But I just don't feel like the value for money is there when you're using it in audio mode compared to what you can get out of it in the full USB mode. So I want to make sure that that's really clear too. But if you are running in USB mode, I think that it's a really great product. I think that's really good value too. But otherwise, I think as always, Next Level Racing have done a really good job on the presentation of this product. The build quality seems to be really good. Do wish that it was washable. I do wish that you could pull the internals out and give it a clean. But that is, you know, a relatively small nitpick really overall in the greater scheme of things. The software presentation is really excellent too. It's nice and approachable. It's not overwhelming. The integration with the sim titles is relatively straightforward too. Didn't really have any problems getting things up and running. Had a couple of issues with iRacing, but I think it's just to do with the amount of stuff that I've got on this rig. When I tested it on another PC, it did work instantly. So I don't think that that's a major issue or something that necessarily anybody else is going to come across. But it just, I guess from the moment that you unbox this product right through to where you get up and driving with it, it's just a really streamlined process. Putting in the serial number, having it actually show you the software to download, tell you if there's any other steps that you need to do, and just kind of holding your hand through the entire process. I think that, you know, Next Level Racing are doing a really good job in that department in general. Their documentation is really great as well. And overall, I think it's just a really well thought out and well refined product. So yeah, I guess the best way to summarize is that for what it is, it does a really good job. It does have its limitations. And I think the main limitation is outside of the audio mode thing, of course, just the relatively small frequency range that you have available with vibration motors compared to tactile transducers. But remember again that I am coming from a very, very, very high-end motion and vibration system that I run on my daily driver rig. So I am pretty spoiled when it comes to that kind of thing. And I think that if this is going to be your first experience with tactile feedback on a sim rig, I think you're going to be really, really impressed with it. So that is the HF8, guys. I really hope that this video has helped you out. Leave a thumbs up if it has. And if you do happen to own one of these, let us know in the comments down below what your experience has been like. Have you noticed anything that we haven't picked up on in today's video? Is there anything that you do maybe a little bit different in your settings? Let the community know in the comments. That's a really great way to make sure that anybody that's looking at getting one of these is going to get the best possible experience. And if you are looking at buying one of these, remember again that we do have those links down in the description below, which is an awesome way of helping support us here at Boosted Media. And remember as well that they do make these available in a lot of bricks and mortars store as well. So just make sure you shop around, make sure you're getting the best possible price. But as always, thank you very much for watching, guys, and we will see you again very soon. Bye.